Welcome to Crew Network's Career Zone, designed to give you a realistic first-hand look at what it's like to be a commercial real estate professional in the legal field. We represent Crew Network, a professional organization dedicated to the mission of advancing the success of women in commercial real estate. Our members represent every specialization within the industry. From appraisals to zoning law, we can handle any part of a commercial real estate transaction. I'd like you to meet our panel of Crew Network members who represent the best and the brightest in our industry, especially in their aspects of the commercial legal field. Our panelists will introduce themselves, share what their careers are like, and provide information to help you understand the career opportunities within commercial real estate and within the legal field. We know it's easier to consider a field when you have role models to guide you. So I'd like to start by introducing myself. My name is Lori Kilberg. I am an equity partner at the commercial real estate law firm of Hartman Simons and Wood in Atlanta, Georgia. My practice and my firm's practice entails really every aspect of commercial real estate, from financing to acquisitions and dispositions. All we do is real estate. We have about 30 lawyers, 12 paralegals, and other staff members. So we are a small law firm and a specialized law firm. What I like best about what I do is my interaction with my clients and my colleagues. Most of my day is spent conferring with clients, conference calls, occasional drafting of documents, and supervising other attorneys within my office who work with these clients. We were discussing earlier one of the things that we like best about our practice, and I think all of us agree that what is the best part is our interaction with clients and the fact that we are often business partners and advisors as well as legal counsel. And I'd like to turn out to Deborah and have you introduce yourself, please.
Thank you, Lori. My name is Deborah Gilbreth, and I'm an equity partner with the firm of Dow, Golub, Remmels, and Beverly, and we're in Houston, Texas. We are a smaller firm than Lori's firm. We have 8 partners and 4 associates. My practice is 100% commercial real estate, like Lori's, and I have been practicing now for 12 years. What I love most about what I do is very similar to what Lori has said, which is the interaction with my clients, being their partner consultant in these major projects and helping them accomplish their specific goals with respect to different matters.
Thank you. Christina.
My name is Christina Freeman Pearsall. I'm an attorney in Greensboro, North Carolina. I'm with a firm called Shell Bray. And for a market the size of Greensboro, it's considered a mid-sized firm, but most folks would consider it a small firm. We have about 20 attorneys at any one given time. And excuse me, my practice is transactional. I do sales, acquisitions, leasing, quite a bit of leasing and financing. And I would say that I share the sentiment that the most enjoyable part of my work is to work in partnership with my clients, to consider the deal, to try to negotiate the best terms possible, and see the issues long term to determine what's best in the long term for the client.
Thank you. Marianne, how about you?
My name's Mariana Jamian. I'm a partner with Nutter, McLennan and Fish in Boston. We're a firm that has about 150 attorneys. We're a full-service law firm. We have one major office in Boston and then a smaller office on Cape Cod in Hyannis, which is very popular throughout the summer, especially on Fridays and Mondays. We have a real estate group that is about 30 people, and our practice covers zoning, permitting, land use and environmental matters, as well as transactional matters. I started my career in-house, and I worked for a company called Showcase Cinemas for the first 3 years of my career. So I was the client at that time, and I was doing legal work in-house that was not focused exclusively on commercial real estate, but included real estate matters. I left after 3.5 years and went to what was then known as a mid-sized law firm of 75 people, and I ended up, because real estate was really booming at that time, entering into a real estate department, and that's where I began my focus in commercial real estate. And after 3.5 years at that firm, I left and I joined Nutter, where I've been ever since. I've served on the firm's management committee for 9 years, and I recently stepped down. So I've had both responsibilities within the firm in terms of looking strategically at our practice, and then also responsibilities within our department to help us grow our practice. My expertise is in transactional work. I represent a range of clients in the commercial real estate industry, both locally and nationally, on acquisitions, development, leasing, and financing.
Thank you. Courtney.
My name's Courtney Marcus. I'm a partner with the law firm of Fulbright and Jaworski. It's a large international firm. We have over 800 attorneys worldwide. I actually started my practice at a smaller regional firm in San Antonio doing traditional real estate work, so leasing and negotiating purchases and sales of property, reviewing title and survey and that type of thing. I've become slightly more specialized. I, as a second-year attorney, was working on a large multifamily housing development project, and after we finalized the real estate, traditional real estate part of the transaction, the client needed to figure out how to pay for the project. And as a young associate, I ended up shifting over and working for the finance partner on the deal and became incredibly interested in finance work. So I shortly thereafter switched firms, went to work for a large New York firm, and have now made my way to a large Texas-based firm. And my practice is primarily representing companies or lenders in negotiating financing for all types of projects, real estate, mergers and acquisitions, restructurings, and I've been doing it for about 15 years now.
You know, Mary Ann and Courtney, you both brought up very interesting aspects of your practice, and that is how you evolved into commercial real estate attorneys. I don't think we grow up necessarily thinking that we're going to want to be a commercial real estate attorney. So I'd like to find out from Christina and Deborah, and then I'll share my own experience. How did you get to commercial real estate?
I started out, this law is actually my second career. I was a social worker right out of undergraduate school, and decided to actually pursue further opportunities in law and remaining in the social services area. That was my intent. So when I came out of law school, I was actually a government attorney for a couple of years. And how I ended up in real estate was I decided that the government work was not what I wanted to do long term, and decided to go into private practice. And at the time, there was a real estate boom, and that was what was needed. And I had some really wonderful opportunities to learn from some other attorneys. They needed real estate counsel, and so I was happy to fill that role.
Wonderful. Deborah, what about you? How did
Also,
you
very indirect route. I worked full-time and went to undergrad school for 13 years at night. And so I was always a part-time student, but had always wanted, I thought, to be a lawyer. And I had many different jobs, lots of times operational management. When I finally went to law school, I did go full-time, but thought I only wanted to be a litigator. In fact, when I graduated from law school, I started out in the litigation section of a very large firm. While I was in that, my very first year, worked on a large real estate project, and became very familiar with the real estate group. And incidentally, this person winds up being my mentor sponsor that we all needed at some point in our career. And this
and we'll
particular,
be talking more about mentorship and
Exactly.
sponsorship. It's very important for all of us.
It is, and this particular senior partner took me to lunch, and said, I noticed you've been working on this litigation matter with my team, and how would you feel about making the move to real estate? And yeah, I was much older because I had worked. I was about 38 at the time. And I looked at him deadpan and said, you do realize that I've never clerked in real estate. I don't know anything about it. And he said, you're smart, you're capable, you can do it. And I accepted the opportunity, which I thought was once in a lifetime, and I have thoroughly enjoyed it.
And I think one thing that is important to note, all of us here at this table right now work for private law firms. That is not the only legal road in commercial real estate. There are government positions, there are in-house positions with developers in all manner, and often many of our contemporaries and friends who have worked in companies as attorneys wind up going over to the business side in that corporation or in that firm. So there are many opportunities that can start with a legal degree but don't necessarily end up in the practice of traditional law. So I just thought that was an interesting point to make. So now I want to turn and ask, you are all successful attorneys. What made you successful? What are the attributes that you think it takes to be successful both within your law firm structure and with your clients? And I'd like to start with the youngest among us, Christina, if you don't mind.
Well, as an associate, my perspective may be a bit different because I answer first and foremost to my clients, but I also answer to the partners of the firm. And I tend to see them in much the same way. I tend to treat the partners as clients as well. And it's so important for your clients to understand that you are there to help them, that you are looking out for their interest. And I think it's likewise for the partners. They also want to know that you're taking good care of their clients and helping the firm overall look appear positively. And it's so important to have, of course, the knowledge. I think that we can all say we have the knowledge, but it's also so important to have the follow-through, to be where you're supposed to be on time, to respond when you're supposed to respond promptly.
You're basically saying that the same skill set that makes you successful with your clients makes you successful within the firm, and
Yes.
I think that that is an excellent point.
Yes, and like I said, everyone here at the table has the skills, and everyone who graduates from law school has the skills, but it's so important to have that follow-through.
That's great. And Marianne, you and I are on the other side of that spectrum.
True.
So I'm very curious to hear, based on your experience, what is the skill set that you think most important to your success?
Oh, I think a couple of different factors. First of all, as I mentioned, I actually went in-house at the very start of my career, and so that helped me focus and think like a client because I was the client. My initial relationships with other counsel were our outside counsel working for the company. And so that helped me to focus on what client service was about because I was in the position of having to answer internally to the other business people within the organization about the legal issues. And that helped me when I went to a firm understand how important it was to think about not only doing a good job, but understanding what was the client's purpose here. The client is in business not to solve unique legal issues, but they're in business to accomplish certain things. And so you need to figure out how can I help the client accomplish what they need to accomplish in the most timely fashion and in the most economical way possible. So I thought that focus really helped me in terms of my client relationships and demonstrate within the firm that I had an understanding of what client needs were, and I think that that's really important. And I think that what is also important is what many people bring to the table. If you are energetic enough to want to build a career and go to get a graduate degree, you understand that it's going to take hard work and you want to do good work. So first and foremost, I think that, you know, having the pride to want to do your best job always is very, very important. I think in terms of unique talents or skills that I might bring to the table, part of it was the ability to understand the importance of the details, but also understand the big picture framework and figure out, you know, that as I grew more senior and more responsible and tended to lead a lot of very complicated projects, my job was to understand how to manage people, how to help the two parties in a transaction accomplish their goals, but also make sure that it was done in a timely, detailed fashion so things didn't fall through the cracks. So I think managing personalities, managing details, being efficient and understanding the economics of what we were doing, all goes into making someone successful in their careers.
Well, and to add to what Marianne was saying, I think the law profession is clearly a client service driven business. But I think if you only think of yourself as a service provider and being responsive to questions that are asked of you instead of forming relationships with clients, first time I get introduced to a client, frankly, get on the internet and Google them. Learn about their business, learn about the professionals who are making decisions within their organizations. The more that you feel a partnership and you can shift from just being a legal advisor to that counselor role, I think the clients appreciate that service. You feel more a part of that relationship and their business. You take an interest. It's exciting. And you know, that's really important on top of the skill set which everybody's mentioned. I think the other thing we touched upon just briefly is having mentors. And mentors can fall into different categories. It can be someone who's truly mentoring you in improving your skill set, but I think there are a lot of soft skills that go along with practicing law, from client development, relationship-oriented, improving communication skills, understanding what it means to be responsive if you haven't been in-house like Marianne and really understand the client's perspective. There are a lot of more senior attorneys. And frankly, clients can be mentors who will take you in and explain what their needs are and
That's an excellent point.
what makes a good counsel and what doesn't make a good counsel. And so you have to take advantage of the resources around you, but having various mentors I think is integral to being successful in any career,
And
including the law.
we will definitely be talking a lot about mentors as we go through. But I'm interested, Deborah, what makes you successful within your law firm?
It's interesting because I think that I have also had different experiences. I worked, you know, for corporations and big companies, and I think some of that translates into your practice of law. Law firms are really just big companies, right? Ultimately, law firms are there to make money as well. And I've worked for mega firms and a small firm, and I think it is slightly different what it takes to be successful at the larger firms than it does at a smaller firm. I'd like to think I was successful at both. I think that probably the way I would describe it, and to someone who's considering this type of career is that, and I think Christina talked a lot about this, is that it's important that the people you work for trust you, believe in you, can count on you. I think by the time you hit a law firm, you've got the skill set, everyone believes in you and knows that you're capable, and there are a lot of capable people. But what separates you is that you are the go-to person. The person that the partner you're working for that time is your internal client, knows that they can depend on you. When you become a partner, that your fellow partners know they can depend on you if they bring you in on a deal. So I think trust is a really big part, and I think that trust goes to the client relationship as well.
Wonderful. Thank you. All right, I'd like to ask each of you, how would you describe the good, the bad, and the ugly of our profession?
I think the good thing about the law for me is it's cerebral. It's interesting. Every client, every business is different. Every transaction is different. And if you enjoy getting to learn continually, then it's a great career and a great career path. And there's so many things you can do with it, whether you stay in a private practice law firm life forever or go in-house. Some of the other things which have been mentioned. I think what is difficult, it is client service driven. And so whether it is the partners you're working for or the ultimate clients that they are working for, you have to be responsive, on the timetable that is set by the client. And sometimes there's flexibility to that, and sometimes there is not. And so as a result, there can sometimes not be enough hours in the day to get all the things done that you really need to accomplish. And that's just a constant struggle, is to figure out the best way to allocate time, to do the best job that you can in that time, to have open communication with the client, convey concerns you may have with their timetable if that's appropriate, and otherwise provide great service.
Okay, Marianne.
Well, as Courtney touched on, I mean, the time demands in a service-related business are very difficult because you don't have control necessarily over your own schedule. When you're a lawyer, you're providing a service, and it's your clients dictate when you provide that service by and large. In other settings, in terms of a government setting, it might be slightly different. And one of the things that has sped up client demands at this point, I think, is technology. The fact that there is an internet has greatly allowed us to have access to information that's been fabulous, that we wouldn't have otherwise been able to have in a timely fashion. And to be able to send people pictures or documents and have them receive them immediately is also a great benefit. But there's also the downside of people thinking that you should be available 24/7 because the internet is available 24/7. Or if someone sends you something, that you're there to immediately read it. And from a professional standpoint, I do worry that with some of the time frames that are escalating as much as they are, that it becomes increasingly difficult to do a really good job on some things that just take more time, that you need the ability to be able to step back and think. And right now, I think because of the economy and because of the uncertainty in the economy, there is this pressure that has been more pronounced now. When people want to do a deal, they want it to happen immediately, even if there's no other reason for it to happen immediately, other than the business people are worried that the environment is going to change suddenly, that something is going to happen and the deal will fall apart just by virtue of passage of time. And so there are those pressures now to deal with that are adding to how to manage a workflow and a work process. And the other pressure, I think, that is definitely part of the ugly is that billable rates for those of us who are in bigger firms are growing. Clients are getting concerned about paying really, really large rates. So we have to find ways of delivering service in an economical fashion, which the clients need. They need certainty and they need low cost, and our law firms want to maximize revenues. So we have to figure out ways of balancing that so the clients feel that they're getting value for our services, and in the meantime we're also being able to provide those services in a way that helps to economically support our organizations.
Yes, there are a lot of conflicting interests going on here, and I think, as you said, the bad and the ugly involve a lot of balancing, not only with our clients, but with our home lives as well. And there are many time pressures on us and demands. We're in a very sophisticated business that requires a lot of thought and a lot of hours. And as you're saying, even though clients expect immediate responses, to be a thoughtful attorney and a good counselor, it is very important that we take the time that we need and not be rushed to do a thorough job for them. So something has to give somewhere usually. And I think a lot of us struggle with work-life balance. And the good news, I think, in this bad and ugly part is that law firms are now much more cognizant of these struggles that many women and men, in fact, have to face when they're raising young families or they have elderly parents to care for, and other personal considerations that are outside the confines of the profession. And I think that as we get more aware of these, as the people in charge, the partnership understands and in fact is comprised of women who are going through these very problems, things are loosening up and there is a greater respect and understanding for all parts of one's life. But it's up to us to understand how to manage that. And I wonder, Deborah, what's your experience been with that?
And I think everything that the panel has said is spot on. But I want to add that I think it's important too to help educate your clients.
Very good.
And I think at my level, at this point in my career, and I'm a new mom, I have a 20-month-old, and I was going to say the bad for me was I waited until I was 47 years old to investigate having a family, because the time constraints of being a young lawyer at a big firm were very demanding. So I have a young son at home and a husband who I would like to spend time with occasionally. But I think, and so at my point in my career, mine is client driven. I really don't have to answer to my firm. And so my clients are the ones who I had to educate on the fact that I have a young family, and that even though I may not physically be in the office, that they'll still get the same work product in a timely fashion. And they've been very receptive to it. I was really afraid, I'm being honest with you, I was very afraid to tell some of my clients that I had adopted this child, because I was concerned that they would feel that they couldn't rely on me because I was there 24/7. I mean, I remember when I started practicing law, I don't know if you ladies have this experience, we didn't have BlackBerries when I first started.
We didn't have Federal Express
Right.
when I first started.
And the advent of the BlackBerry created this expectation that you were available 24/7. Because if you had a BlackBerry, you could receive
Right.
the email, and the expectation was you would respond to that email. No more leaving the office and then the next morning coming in at 7 and then responding to those emails. And so it's been good and bad, because it gives you the flexibility to leave the office and be at the ball game or the doctor's appointment. But the downside is that the client thinks that they've sent you an email and you haven't replied. So I've really, in the last 2 years, worked on trying to get my clients to understand that, that they give me some flexibility to continue to work with them, but to allow me to also dedicate some time to some other things that are important. All of our clients have families. All of our clients have aging parents. All of our clients have interests outside of what they do. So I think if you can connect with them on a personal level, I think that helps.
Excellent advice. And Christina, what about from your perspective as an associate in the law firm? What's the good, bad, and the ugly for you?
Well, the good is very good. It's a very comfortable work environment. It's as Courtney said, it's very intellectually challenging. It's always interesting. Every situation is different. It's very dynamic. Things are coming in quickly, and it can be very exciting. It's hard to explain how that can be exciting when you're sitting at your desk and you're reading emails, but it can be very enjoyable.
Stimulating.
Stimulating, very much so, sometimes overstimulating. And another very positive aspect is the relationship building with the client, with the other people who are part of the deal, the brokers, the title companies, the surveyors. It's always very interesting, and it's fun to build those relationships and know that they might lead to other opportunities. And so there are a lot of good things about the profession. The bad and the ugly, well, there are some of those as well. Work-life balance is definitely one of my greatest challenges. Feeling like I'm putting enough time in the office and giving my clients what they need, meeting their needs, and then also meeting the needs of my family. I opted not to have children because I felt like that balance, that I would not be able to do what I needed to do for my children if I had them. So I have opted not to have children and to pursue my career. And that has not, that's not always been the easiest choice.
What gets you through the bad and the ugly part?
When I have a question, I need a quick response, I know I can call my friends and crew and say, I have a question, can you help me with this? Time is of the essence. I need to know right now. And I know I'm going to get a response. And I've met some wonderful connections through Crew, and wouldn't trade Crew for anything in this world. That I know that if I need advice, there are some senior women in Crew who can help me. If I have just need a quick question, I know that I will be able to call on them and get an answer.
I'd like to say one more thing too about work-life balance, and this is a little counterintuitive, but one of the huge goods for me, one of the huge advantages of practicing law, is that I believe I have a lot more flexibility than a lot of other people who are raising families in the industry. Because of my position with my law firm, I was able to work remotely from home, the advent of all of those things that we love and hate, such as email and computers and fax machines, and although I don't even think they use fax machines anymore. But I was able to practice from my house and work odd hours, different hours. I had clients in California, so I was able to give my children dinner, put them to bed, and then go to work. I think there is just a lot of flexibility also tied into today's technology and to the practice of law. And I think there are ways for all of us to figure out where we fit best in that continuum. And it'll change. It'll change from when your children are young to perhaps when they go off to school. And now that I'm an empty nester, I don't really have anything else to do. So I'm able to spend long hours in the office, and it is a continuum, I think. But I'm interested also, mentorship is so important, and I think all of us who are fortunate enough to be at this point, excuse me, in our careers, have done so because we've had guidance. We've had people who have taken interest in us and our professions and have reached out and helped us along the way. And Courtney, I'd like to hear a little, you started talking about some mentors in your life. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Sure, I have several. And frankly, it started when I was a summer associate doing my internship at one of the firms, well, the first firm I went to work for in San Antonio. And I had a particular memo that was due, and that summer associate program is really a long job interview. And it's very important that all the work product you turn in is good, and it's really being graded. And I had a partner sit down with me who was happy to read my work product before I turned it in and offer some suggestions. And he was in the real estate group that I ultimately ended up going into. And that was a big part of that decision. And when I switched firms, when I went from being traditional real estate into corporate finance, and I went to work for a big New York firm, the first week I was there, I was handed a credit facility and a term sheet and told to go draft. And I was in way over my head. And I called this partner at my first firm and said, you have to explain to me what is a tranche, what is a revolver, walk me through this. And he literally spent like 4 hours with me on the phone that night helping me draft my first document. So, I still carry through. His children now are out of school and live in Dallas, and so he comes to visit and I get to see them. But along the way, any place that I've been, and even I would call some clients mentors, I think it's really important, one, to figure out how to navigate your responsibilities to the law firm and also to the client, and two, just to have a sounding board. We all have days where we need to go in and vent a little, or we need to just leave and go have a mental health day, and it's nice to have that person to bounce things off who's been down that path before, and they really are your cheerleader, especially when you start talking about advancing your position in a law firm, moving from an associate to a counsel or a partner status. And it becomes very important to have those people who are there cheering for you.
Courtney, speaking about mentors within the law firm, or as we like to talk about them, sponsors, people who will actively advocate for your advancement within the firm, how do you find such a sponsor?
I don't know if you find them. You sort of find each other is what I found. A lot of law firms, and certainly our law firm, have put formal mentoring programs in place. And so we try and match associates, younger associates and more senior associates. We also do it between associates and partners. Sometimes that works, but it's a little bit forced. I think the mentor that you find that truly does become your advocate, and that you end up having that very close relationship with, you know, in that particular position or otherwise, is just someone who finds you and you find them. And I think the way that you go about doing that is you have to start off asking a lot of questions in any new career. You know, going to people, trying to match personalities, whether it's grabbing lunch or grabbing a drink, or, you know, simply walking in and asking them about a client relationship or a deal and showing interest. And in return, people show interest in you. But you do have to put yourself out there in order to help create that relationship. But I don't know if there's any magic way. It's like finding your best friend. It just sort of happens.
That's great. Go ahead. No, please, Deborah.
I'm sorry, I was going to just add, it's really, I think, important too to find the mentor in the firm, if that's where you're going, that has the, I guess, the success or essentially what you want to emulate. Because I think that you find that all of us have maybe different objectives. And so it's really important to find the sponsor or the mentor who's found a way to accomplish what you think you're moving towards. Because sometimes, and you do have to have a multiple, I think, of different mentors for different purposes. But I do think it's important to identify one who's going in the same direction you are. And I just wanted to add about the client being the mentor. I would say, I think my biggest sponsors were my clients.
Interesting.
I think that my client relationships are what helped me advance within my firm. Because I think my clients telling the senior partner I worked for, you know, that I did great work, or that they thought I could handle a very large project, gave me opportunities that I maybe wouldn't have had. And so I give my clients 100% credit for my career advancement. I give my mentors 100% credit for helping me learn how to give that superior customer service and to teach me my craft. I mean, my mentor met with me every Saturday morning, literally at 7 a.m. for about 2 hours. And the protocol was I could come in on a Saturday morning with him, and he would sit at his desk and he would go through his mail or do other things while we talked.
Was this a partner? Could you
It was my
identify who
senior
this
partner.
mentor
It
is?
was, it was a senior partner at a very large law firm, the one who convinced me to move to real estate. And so every Saturday morning he would sit there with a large cup of coffee and a big stack of mail. And he was also the chairman of the planning commission of the city in which I work in. So he would sometimes sign the Mylars while we did this. And I would have a list of questions, and they could be anything from why did we draft an easement in that way to why did you respond to the client in that way? And today, when I mentor or I advise young associates, paralegals, or staff, I find myself saying many of the same things he told me. And so I give him 100% credit for the lawyer I am today, but I feel like my clients are the ones who truly help me advance.
That's great. Mary Ann.
Well, I think I probably had a little bit of a different experience in the sense that I didn't have a mentor per se. When I went in-house, there wasn't a legal team that was there, so there wasn't an immediate program in place or even a deep department to learn from. And in fact, that's one of the reasons I was anxious or interested is probably a better word in going to a law firm, was to see what it would be like to work in a place with other colleagues, who were available to talk about things. And I think part of it is timing. Like Lori, I'm a more senior partner in terms of my career at this point. There weren't mentoring programs in place when I was younger. There weren't a lot of women in real estate. There weren't natural role models, and men weren't thinking about necessarily mentoring women associates. I mean, women associates were kind of still a new thing.
Right.
I don't feel like I'm an old person, but I was the first woman partner in our real estate department. I was the first woman partner on our management committee. And our firm's over 135 years old. So there weren't natural kind of role models necessarily in place. And probably partly it was my own personality not to know that I could ask people for help. and ask people for advice. So I think that's one of the things I would encourage people to do, is to, ask for advice. I mean, most people, even if they're very busy, want to help others. And so I think that that's a very important aspect to understand and to know that you need that kind of advice and you need that kind of help to kind of navigate your career. And I was just so focused on doing a good job that I wasn't really planning my career. I wasn't thinking about, how do you go from being an associate to being a partner? It happened because I was doing well, that I had a significant client relationship that ended up bringing in a lot of work for the firm. And so I was doing what was required and necessary, but I wasn't planning it.
And you
it
didn't
happened.
necessarily know what you had to do to take the next step. And I think what Marianne says is so interesting, because I graduated from law school in 1980. There were a few other women in my firm, but not many, and I was in a larger firm. I had no clue what it took to become a partner. I had no clue what compensation ranges were, and we're going to be talking a little bit about that too. And no one to ask, and as Marianne said, I wasn't even sure that I was supposed to ask or even thought of asking. You got in there, you worked as hard as you possibly could, stayed as long as you had to stay, and there weren't people you could just even hang out with and sort of ask on the side. It was very structured and quite a bit scary. And I think one of the huge improvements that's been made is that there are people out there now, both men and women, who are more than willing to take the time, as we've heard here, and I think that's just wonderful.
One of the things that I did and reasons I joined New Wire, which is the Boston chapter of CREW, was because I didn't feel like I had that network of people to help me. And I thought it would, that would be a way of finding other people who could, teach me about what it took to be in the industry, what was going on in the industry. And I was able to form relationships with not just other lawyers, but with other people in the industry, because I think it's important to remember, to be a good lawyer, you have to understand the business and the industry as a whole. And so that helped me enormously. And I think it's important to remember you can learn from other people just by watching what they're doing and learning and taking different aspects of what you admire in how they're performing in their jobs. And I think that that's a key role as well. And I think that thankfully law schools are becoming a little bit more attuned to the fact that there are very many practical aspects to what it means to be a lawyer. Not everybody goes into a litigation department first. Not everybody spends their time writing memos and doing research, which was predominantly what you learned in law school. And so now I think they're helping a little bit better to learn that there are different roles that lawyers play, that requires different skill sets, and there are different career paths. And so there's at least a sense that there are, like I said, career paths to consider. And so I think law school students now and young lawyers at least have more of a sense of the environment than I did. Initially, it was very rare when I went in-house, right out of law school, for someone to do that. That was not necessarily a known or a traditional career path. And that happened simply because I had done a research job with someone who was running, the president of Showcase Cinemas. He was teaching a law school course. And so that's what happened. Now, in-house positions are recognized as a valuable part of the industry. Government positions are recognized. So I think law schools are beginning to help in that regard as well as professional organizations, just by even having like CREW Network do this panel presentation along with the other panel presentations that will be available to help you understand what it's like to be in the industry.
I just want to turn to a very practical matter, and that is compensation. I think that, certainly people think that attorneys are very well compensated, probably more so than in most other professions. And it's kind of a very hushed, taboo topic, one that we're not, and I don't know if this is as women or as attorneys are very comfortable discussing, but it's crucial. I mean, we're all in this business, as much as we love it, to make a living. And I'm wondering, we all here are in private law firms, a good range of size of law firms and experience within law firms. And what are you seeing as compensation these days for starting attorneys, ranges, and what happens once you get that coveted partnership position? How does your world change? And Mary Ann, I'd like to start with you on this one, please.
Sure. As I mentioned earlier, I'm with a law firm that has about 150 people in Boston. Boston is a very competitive legal marketplace. As a whole, we kind of peg our rates to New York. That's where we're the most competitive in terms of kind of comparing ourselves and also looking to the same kinds of clients. So large firms in both of those cities, New York more so than Boston, tend to charge very high rates and tend to pay their associates very well. They demand a lot of hours, but the starting salaries can range right now from $140,000 to $180,000, depending upon the size of the law firm in that particular market. We are not at the high point of that range, and our compensation system is set up for advancement as associates. You can increase your salaries by increasing your skills. Your skill set is looked upon, the number of hours that you work is looked upon in the evaluations. We have a target billable hour of 1,900 hours for associates. There are many larger firms that have 2,200 or 2,300 hours as billable hour targets, and that's a lot of hours to put in. And on top of the salary, people will get bonuses, and again, the bonuses will range. Some firms have lockstep advancement. We do not. We do not have guaranteed bonuses either, in terms of if you hit a billable hour target, you automatically get a bonus. We look at the quality of the hours. What are you doing? What kinds of clients are you serving? How important is the relationship of what you're doing? So those are all of the kinds of factors that go into associate compensation. Partner compensation is a whole different kind of thing. Law firms have evolved right now so that there are ranges of compensation, even in large firms, for partners based upon whether you're an equity partner or if you're a contract partner or what's called an income partner and you don't have an ownership interest in the firm. If you're an equity partner, that means you have an ownership interest in the firm and typically means you get a share of the profits. And as law firms have evolved, it used to be there was an up or out system in most law firms where if you didn't make partner, you went elsewhere. Now there's more of an evolving environment where you invest a lot of time and energy in people and you don't necessarily want the person to move on. And you can find a role for that person, and then it becomes, is this a person a contract partner? Do they stay for a long period of time? Do they have a specialized area of expertise where you need that expertise, but there isn't an expectation that they need to bring in business in order to stay? For partners, their compensation depends not only on how many hours that you bill, but what are your client relationships? Are you working on major clients for the firm? Are you responsible for that relationship? Do you control deals for them? Are you the person who brought the relationship to the firm? All of those factors go into setting compensation. And then in our firm, we also have a pool of money that we set aside every year as we do our budget for the partners, where you're basically using that pool to, in essence, give bonuses. You know, because our compensation system is forward-looking. We set our share of the profits ahead of time, and then at the end of the year, we take a look back, and if somebody did extraordinarily well, you know, and performed above where the expectation was, then, you know, we use that pool of money in essence to say, you deserve more. And obviously, if the firm does well, everybody does even better than hopefully was budgeted. But that separate pool of money is used also to try to compensate people for the unexpected.
Interesting. Deborah, you're in a smaller firm, so
Right.
how does your compensation structure work?
For our associates, and again, I want to just make the point that we're in Houston, Texas, and there's definitely a clear distinction between what market you're in. In
point.
Houston, because in the eastern, in the more competitive markets, the rates are higher. Our
Christina and
associates,
I definitely are on the lower end of that spectrum.
so in my area, starting salaries for associates ranges at a smaller firm between 80 and 110,000, with an opportunity to get a bonus as well, productivity based, but also quality based, as you've pointed. For partners, ours is much more focused on your what your contribution to the firm is, in that in our firm you have to have your own business, and so it's going to be a direct correlation of that. But to give you just a sense, as a partner, you can make, some associates at larger firms make more than some partners at smaller firms. So you can have partners at smaller firms who make $150,000 to $200,000 a year, but you can also have partners who make $1 million a year. So
Wide range.
in my world, it's a function of how hard you work, your client relationships, and the business that you bring in.
And I'd like to close with one final question, and that is, what advice do you give to somebody who's starting out right now?
I think it's a really exciting field. I think despite the breadth of the conversation we had, the trick is not to get overwhelmed. To find something that's going to interest you for the next couple of years that you're willing to sign up for, to find a group of people you enjoy working with, to find an environment you enjoy that's engaging and, again, intellectually challenging. Just get your feet wet, because you're going to spend those first couple of years really improving your skill set, and you can worry about some of these other things a couple years after that. But it's an exciting place to be. You'll learn a lot. You may change your mind, and that's okay too, but just get started.
And with that, we're going to wrap up this panel, and I'd like to thank our panelists. I think it's been a very interesting discussion. Obviously, we could go on for much, much longer, and we encourage people to reach out to people like us to find out more, either through your Cru chapters or however you can. And I would like just to thank our premier partner of Cru Network, Walmart Realty, who has made all this possible, and to tell you that we look forward to seeing you at future Cru events, hopefully our next annual convention in Dallas. Thank you.